Let's play the game where I have to talk about a movie for 5 minutes without saying a single thing about the plot. Keeping up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe sort of feels like coming back to watch a triple-length episode of the world's highest-budget television show 2 or 3 times a year. Not every movie is fantastic, but on the whole, this is a show that I've really been enjoying. Taking that analogy further, Avengers Endgame feels like the biggest and most epic season finale in the history of the medium. The film's title is completely appropriate. I know that they've been separating these movies into phases pretty much since the get-go, but this is, to me, the first time in this now 22 installment film series that the cutoff doesn't feel arbitrary. It really does feel like we've reached some sort of conclusion here, or at the very least a highly significant crossroads. Also, yeah, the movie is good. It's really damn good, actually.
You're damn right.
The best one ever? I don't think so, but I do think it's definitely a contender to make top 5. I don't know, I'd have to see it a couple more times. What I can say definitively is that Avengers Endgame, more than any of its predecessors, proves that the interconnected film franchise experiment that Marvel Studios began 11 years ago works. This is by far the furthest that any of these movies have ever pushed the shared universe aspect of the various MCU sub-brands. It would never have been possible to make something quite like this movie and have it work as well as it does without any of the setup or connective tissue that it's gotten from the many earlier films. That was true of Avengers Infinity War as well, but doubly so here. Meanwhile, amazingly, I'd say that the only other film that's mandatory viewing going into this is Infinity War, which, hey, that's totally fair. I mean, this is a direct sequel. But yeah, those of you who, like me, have been keeping up the whole time will obviously get a whole lot more out of the movie than someone who goes in cold or who's only seen bits and pieces. There is a ton of fan service in Endgame, but it almost never gets obnoxious. There are maybe 1 or 2 moments that are a tad eye-rolly, but even at those points, it honestly feels like the movie is rolling its own eyes and chuckling along with you more than anything else. I think that the most surprising thing about the film is that after all this time, it's still able to find new things to do with its characters. Again, without getting into any spoilers, Tony Stark, for example, has now been in 9 of these movies, and Avengers Endgame is still able to find new and interesting ways to explore him as a character.
How about that?
Among the rest of the main cast, I particularly like the directions that this film takes Steve Rogers, Bruce Banner, and most surprisingly of all, Karen Gillan as Nebula from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Character has often been one of these Marvel movies' greatest strengths, and this film does a better job than most at humanizing these people, most of whom are way larger than life.
Everybody in this room is about that superhero life.
In the aftermath of Infinity War's cliffhanger ending, then running with it in a bunch of really unexpected and satisfying ways, at least to me. The only character I wasn't completely sold on was Thor. Back when I first saw Thor Ragnarok, I expressed some concern over how much goofier they made him compared to previous outings. Well, Endgame cranks it up even further, to the point that he's essentially this film's comic relief.
Is he though?
I did admittedly find most of it pretty damn funny, but the shtick was wearing a bit thin for me by the end. Still, that's a pretty minor complaint in the long run. Like I said, most of the character stuff is great. The plot is also pretty good, all things considered. I don't think anyone else could have reasonably been expected to do any better of a job writing this thing, considering how many balls it's got up in the air. Like many of the other Marvel movies, Endgame also does a decent job of striking a good balance tonally between comedic and dramatic beats.
Perfectly balanced. This whole thing should be.
Though, if you're one of those people who just dislikes how jokey the MCU movies are in general, this one isn't gonna change your mind. And finally, of course, the big blowout action scene at the end of the movie is spectacular, and it had the whole theater, including me, cheering pretty much nonstop. I'm really not much of a comic book person, at least when it comes to these big, decades-long interconnected universe type deals, but this film seems like basically what I assume pretty much every diehard Marvel Comics fan imagined was possible back when they first saw Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury step into view at the end of Iron Man in 2008.
God, seems like 1,000 years ago.
Anyway, look, I know that my recommendation for Avengers Endgame is ultimately pretty redundant given that 90+% of you guys still with me at this point have either already seen the movie or have already made plans to do so within the next couple of weeks, but for what it's worth, yes, I do wholeheartedly recommend Avengers Endgame.
You trust me? I do.
It's a hell of a fun ride and a hell of a finale to this first, whatever you want to call it, chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. And thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you could help me out a lot by hitting that like button, subscribing if you're new, and ringing the bell to stay up to date on future videos. Leave a comment down below letting me know any of your thoughts on Avengers Endgame, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up on my channel. As always, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.